I'm very pleased to introduce Paul Doiron, a fast-rising star in the crime fiction world, with his critically acclaimed Mike Bowditch mystery series. Paul's first book in the series, The Poacher's Son, was an immediate success, winning the Barry Award, the Strand Critics Award for Best First Novel, and an Edgar Award nomination, among many other award nominations. Subsequent books in the series have won the Maine Literary Award, been named Indie Next Picks, Romantic Times Top Picks, and American Booksellers Association Indie Bestsellers. His latest book, The Widowmaker, is the 7th book in the series and is just out in stores, hot off the press this week, as Paul is currently touring. So give him a break tonight, he's tired. Paul is the editor emeritus of Down East, the magazine of Maine, having served as editor-in-chief from 2005 to 2013, before stepping down to write full-time. A native of Maine, he attended Yale University, where he graduated with a degree in English, yay, and holds an MFA in creative writing from Emerson College. Please join me in welcoming Paul.
Well, thank you very much for coming out tonight. I rarely get to Connecticut these days, although, as you heard, I was a Yale grad, so I was in Connecticut quite a long time. And had a really great education. I loved my experience at Yale, and loved my time in Connecticut. So it's kind of a fun add on that I can come back here and do this. Tonight I'm going to read to you from my 7th book, which is called Widowmaker, and as many of you know, it's the 7th in a series. Years and years ago, I wrote a book called The Poacher's Son, which at that time I had no idea was going to be the beginning of a series. I wrote it as if it was going to be the first and last book I ever wrote. And I sent it to an agent, and she said, "I love it. Paul, this is a great book. But, here you go. I only represent authors who are trying to do this as a career. And so what I want to know from you is this the first book of a series?" And I have had some ideas in my head about, lots of things I could do. But my answer to her was, "Damn right it's a series." Are you kidding me? You're so psychic. It's like you just picked right up on the fact that this is going on. And so I have my agent, and it's still the same agent. And you have to excuse me if this is like, I don't know what's going on here. I trust that if somebody in back knows more about these things than I do, that they'll like, no, it's okay. So when I started writing The Poacher's Son, it was the first book of a non-existent series, and it then became the beginning of something. But what I realized was that I was writing about this character who was so frustrating. He was impetuous and damaged and headstrong, and it's like nobody will ever follow him forward unless I make as my project kind of moving this character from book to book forward. So what I would say is that if you have read the series, Widowmaker actually is a really crucial book in what happens with Mike, because it's the book that he's been trying to push his dad out of his mind for a long, long time, and it's finally the book where he realizes that he can't do that anymore. So I'm going to read to you, and then I'll take some questions. But I'm going to read to you from chapter 6, which usually I read chapter 1 or 2. But what I like about this chapter is that it requires absolutely no preparation. You can just go for it. You can just if you want to read anything else, you can, and if you don't, that's fine. But I bet you will. The driveway of the next house hadn't been plowed, and there were no lights in the windows or smoke coming from the chimney. I gave it a pass. The same with the one after. The homes along Pondicherry Pond seemed to be mostly seasonal cottages. Toward the end of the camp road, I came upon an old guy in a green bathrobe, sweatpants, and packed boots. I should warn you here. I'm a Maine native, and I can't do a Maine accent. When you listen to this guy, just imagine a Maine accent, okay? He was pushing a snowblower that was throwing an arc of glistening powder high into the air. When he spotted my warden truck at the end of the drive, he turned off the gas and leaned his weight against the handles in lieu of a walker. He studied me as I came around the front of my vehicle. "Morning," I said. "Morning, Warden," he said in an accent that eschewed all R's. Beautiful day, isn't it? Quite chilly, I'd say. He had a roseate nose, a scruffy beard that was more like a really bad shave, and was probably bald under his fur-lined bomber hat. "What can I do for you?" "You wouldn't have a dog, would you?" "Used to." "What about any of your neighbors along this road?" "Some do, some don't." I could see how this conversation was going to go unless I unfolded it and took my initiative. "Any of them let their dogs run free?" I got a call from a woman down the road saying a dog was chasing deer through her yard. It killed a little yearling in the woods back of her property. I'm trying to find the owner. "Was that lady who has all that artsy yard crap in her dooryard?" I nodded. "Yeah, that's the one." "Didn't know you wardens was moonlighting as dog catchers," he said. "Well, only when the dogs chase deer." His bathrobe opened when he straightened up and revealed a faded T-shirt with a Green Beret logo on the front and the Latin words "De oppresso liber." "Think Carrie Michaud might have a new dog," he said. "Some kind of shepherd or husky mix, I think. Black as the Earl of Hell's waistcoat. Saw it riding in a truck with her the other day. I heard it howling the other night, too." "What do you mean howling?" "You know," he said, and let loose with a loud and shockingly accurate wolf call. I was getting a churning feeling in my stomach that told me my strange day might yet take a stranger turn. "You sure it wasn't barking?" He gave me a look as if the question was the most asinine thing he'd heard. "Okay, so which house is Carrie Michaud's?" I asked. "Blue one, at the corner. Got loads of yard out front. You can't miss it. Don't tell her if it was me who told you, though. Carrie's a little thing, but she can get worked up pretty good." I won't. Before I could thank him for his help, he restarted the blower. I watched him shuffle along behind the noisy machine, smelling the heady gasoline exhaust in the cold air, and wondering what this old Green Beret's story was. You never know who you're going to meet holed up in some backwoods shack. I suspected that it might take a long time to pry this man's tail out of him. And then I would be disappointed to learn that he had bought the t-shirt for $2 down at the Goodwill store. Some breeds of dog bark, others bay. I had heard dogs moan or wail when they were hurt or unhappy. They were incapable of all sorts of unexpected vocalizations. But the old man had perfectly imitated a wolf's howl. And unless he was having fun with me, which was a distinct possibility, it meant that I might owe Gail Evans an apology. I had no trouble finding Carrie Michaud's house. The front yard was littered with snow-covered appliances and rusting scraps metal. By yard art, the old geezer hadn't meant sculptures like those outside Gail Evans's house. He had meant junk. The house itself wasn't much better. Someone had once painted its cedar shingles bright blue, but the color had faded and had now turned a color I associated with the lips of people who'd frozen to death. The blinds were all drawn as if whoever lived behind them was allergic to sunlight. A yellow plastic sign posted to a pine warned against trespassing. Another said, "Beware of dog." In the driveway were parked 2 trucks, a Suzuki Equator and a Mitsubishi Raider, both painted black. As I climbed out of my own truck, I removed my gloves and felt without looking for the canister of pepper spray on my belt. There were no dogs visible, but I did see prints in the snow, big ones, like those I'd found in the woods behind Gail Evans' house, and the pièce de résistance, an enormous pile of shit. They hadn't bothered to shovel the walk, but had worn a path from the drive that required me to place one foot in front of the other. I heard music pounding through the front door, screeching guitars and machine gun drums. I pushed the glowing doorbell and waited. I gave it a minute, then banged with my fist. Eventually, the door was opened by a skinny guy who looked like he just walked off the set of a post-apocalyptic horror movie. He had bleach hair, disc earrings that had stretched holes in the lobes wide enough to stick your fingers through, and a bone-white complexion. He wore a sleeveless purple t-shirt, cargo pants, and leather boots with a surplus of non-functional buckles. Now, when goth fashion had finally come to Maine, everything came to my rural state long after it was passé after it. It had lost something in the translation. You wouldn't happen to own a dog, would you? I said. He turned and yelled over his shoulder into the darkened, thumping interior of the house. "Carrie? What?" came a shrill voice. "Do we own a dog?" "What?" "There's a game warden at the door." The music stopped, as if a plug had been pulled. I heard staccato footsteps on the staircase. "What's your name?" I asked the goth. "Spike." "You don't know if you have a dog, Spike?" "It ain't my house, man." A moment later, a woman elbowed her male friend aside to face me. She stood no more than 5 feet tall and weighed, I was guessing, no more than 90 pounds. She had a pixie haircut dyed black, a painful-looking sore on her lip, and bile green eyeshadow. Like her beau, she was outfitted for the end time in a leather vest with no shirt underneath, and black jeans rolled above her bare ankles. She also happened to have a new tattoo on her forearm. It was poorly drawn and still scabbed, but it was unmistakably the silhouette of a howling wolf. "Didn't you see that sign?" she said, in the over-loud voice that people use who are hard of hearing. Her eardrums must have still been stunned from all that metal. "No trespassing!" "It doesn't apply to law enforcement," I said. "I also saw the Beware of Dogs sign. What kind of dog is it?" "What do you want to know?" "Well, a dog killed a deer down the road from here." One side of her mouth, the side with the sore, twitched. "I don't have a dog no more. That sign's old. Who told you I have the dog?" "You're Carrie Mishu, aren't you?" "So what?" Everything about this hostile, manic, hollow-eyed person shouted narcotics. "Look, Carrie, I know you own a dog. There are dog tracks and urine stains all over your yard. There's a big pile of dog shit next to the snowbank. You need to stop lying to me. Now, why don't you go get your dog?" "So you can give me a ticket?" "Ha! No way." I was tired of playing coy with my suspicions. It's a wolf dog, isn't it, Carrie?" Before I could say another word, she slammed the door in my face. Wolf dogs are the hybrid offspring of wolves and domestic dogs, bred mostly for people who want the thrill of saying that they own the baddest animal on the block. They rank above pit bulls in that regard. They also happen to be illegal to possess in the state of Maine. I backed slowly away from the front door and looked at the windows. Sure enough, one of the blinds was lifted, and I saw the goth's face peering out. I made sure to be loud. "Open the door, please." Carrie Mishu appeared in the next window. "Fuck you!" So much for negotiation. I retreated back to my truck and turned the key in the ignition. Once hot air was finally blowing through the vents and my face was feeling less like a death mask, I picked up my phone and dialed a friend. "Kathy, it's Mike." "Grasshopper, long time no speak." Kathy Frost had been my field training officer and sergeant when I joined the warden service. For years, she had headed all of the warden service's K-9 teams until she was forced to take early retirement due to injuries she'd sustained from a gunshot. She still helped us during search and rescue operations, directing the efforts of dog teams to cover the most grounds in the fastest amount of time. No one I'd ever met knew more about dogs than Kathy. "How's retirement?" I asked. "I'm thinking of buying a metal detector." "What does that tell you?" "That bad?" "Worse." "Listen, what can you tell me about wolf dogs?" "Well, they're illegal to possess without a permit." "I'm wondering how I can identify one." "You can't," she said. "I mean, not by sight. You can look for certain features, long legs, slanted eyes, small ears, but you still might be looking at an animal that's one part Siberian Husky, one part Malinois. Breeders have gotten good at making fakes, since people will pay top dollar for an honest-to-Jesus Timberwolf." Oops, excuse me. Oops. I guess I'm going to be speaking into this thing. "What's top dollar?" Oops. Can I do this one? Does this work? No.
Should it turn on?
Okay, is it better? Does that work?
Now it does.
It does work? No? Okay. I'm going to use this one.
Is that your mic who's making it? No?
No. No, it's just me.
Make sure this is off.
Okay. So when I left you, you were like spellbound, wondering what Kathy was going to say. And what she says is that it costs $2,000 for a high content wolf dog. Generally speaking, the more wolf DNA it has, the more expensive it is. Why do you want to know? Well, this is Mike. I got a situation with some tweakers. I think they're keeping a wolf dog, and I'm going to have to confiscate it. I was hoping there was a way I could tell if it was a real thing or not. Kathy? The only way to know for certain is a lab test. Well, I know it's been chasing deer. I said it killed a yearling this morning. That doesn't prove anything. But it gives you a cause to take it to a shelter. You can test it there. What happens if the results come back positive? What if it's a high-content wolf dog? Usually the department will try to find someone to adopt it, but if yours killed a deer, they'll probably be put down. Anything else I should know? Are you going to try wrangling that animal yourself? Well, I don't have a carrier or catch pole with me today, I said. So I'll probably be calling an animal damage control agent. Be careful, Kathy said. There's a reason why wolf dogs are illegal. Most of them are unpredictable and pretty near untrainable. They are super intelligent. I read somewhere that training a dog is like training a toddler. Training a wolf is like training a 35-year-old man. Well, thanks. I'll let you know how it goes. When are you a new puppy, by the way? I just haven't met the right dog yet. Kathy had once owned a coonhound named Pluto, whose nose was the stuff of legend, but he had died the night she had herself been shot, and she hadn't yet adopted another young dog to train. I had thought her grief for Pluto would abate over time, but as her period of mourning had stretched on and on, I began to worry about her. Let me know how it goes, she said. 10:04. I glanced back at the house, certain that they had been watching me the whole time, worried that what I might be doing. That was good. I wanted them to be spooked. For my plan to work, they needed to panic. I put the transmission into gear and started forward. I drove 100 yards until I was well out of sight of Kiramisho's house. The snowplows had carved out a wide spot in the road where they could reverse direction. It was the perfect place to hide my truck. I wasn't sure how much time I had, but I didn't want to miss my chance. I reached into the back seat and rummaged around until I found the white poncho I'd used as wintertime camouflage. I pulled the hood over my head and got out. Moving from shadow to shadow, I made my way back along the frozen road, expecting to see one of the pickup trucks come roaring in reverse out of the driveway at any moment. When I reached the tall snowbank at the end of Carey's Drive, I threw myself against it, then squirmed into position so I could peer over the top of it. I didn't have long to wait. Within a matter of minutes, Spike emerged from the house, pulling a magnificent black animal behind him on a leash. Each dark hair in its coat seemed to shimmer as it padded along. Long legs, slanted eyes, small, sharp ears. I understood Kathy's caution about not jumping to conclusions, but there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that this creature was, in any meaningful sense, a wolf. And yet, when Spike opened the passenger door of his truck, the animal leaped obediently inside, as eager as the family dog to go for a ride. "Goodbye, boy, Shadow," I heard the Goth say. He had pulled on a black trench coat and fingerless gloves to make his getaway. He moved with surprising speed and purpose for a man with so few functioning brain cells. He hurried around the front of the truck, pushing the remote starter button on the key fob. I heard the engine turn over. I tumbled down over the snowbank and jumped into the driveway. "Hold it, Spike!" The Goth stopped in his tracks. His arms dropped to his sides, and his mouth fell open. For about 10 seconds, he gawked at me. Then he reached for the driver's door. "Hold it right there!" I sprinted forward as he climbed inside the running truck, and I managed to catch the door handle before he could yank it shut. We played tug of war for a few seconds, and then he threw the truck into reverse. The pickup lurched away, forcing me to release my grip or be pulled along with it. I would estimate that the backward-moving Raider hit the snowbank at 30 miles per hour, enough speed to fill the bed with snow and bury the rear wheels. Spike tried to drive forward, but he was stuck now. An acrid cloud of exhaust fumes and burning rubber gathered around the truck as he tried in vain to dislodge it. I put my hand on the grip of my sardom. I'd reached the limits of my patience. The idiot might have dislodged my shoulder. Step out of the vehicle. He stared open-mouthed at me through the windshield as I got myself into position parallel to the door. Just as I was about to repeat my command for him to get out, he threw himself across the seat and pushed the passenger door open, shouting, "Go, Shadow, go!" The wolf dog gave a yelp, then hit the snow. But instead of running off, the beautiful animal stopped. He stood there, looking back and forth between us with his luminous yellow eyes. He seemed to have no idea what was happening. I couldn't blame him. This whole comedy had me shaking my head. Wait until I told Kathy how it had all gone down. "Step out of the vehicle," I shuddered again. "Step out of the vehicle now." It was then that a dark shape swooped into my peripheral vision. I was so focused on the ridiculous man behind the wheel that I missed Carrie Michaud running up behind me. I felt the knife between my shoulder blades before I saw it. Buy the book. Oh, thank you. Thank you, I'm back. Usually what happens is that I usually read the first 1 or 2 chapters of the book. And in this case, my wife was saying, "You must read chapter 6." So it does, it certainly it's an important part in the story because Mike is stabbed and he survives. I'm not going to spoil, I am spoiling things, I guess, but he's not narrating this as a ghost. So anyway, it's kind of a fun thing. He's survived a near-death experience and is free to kind of investigate the rest of this book, which you'll discover when you read it. Usually what happens is that I can talk about my books forever and try not to. Instead, what I like to do is to see what you are interested in hearing. Oh yes, go back there.
I saw right up for this session that it mentioned specifically something I had not picked up, that each of the 7 books is set at a different time of year,
Yep.
month. And what month was this? I just got the book, I haven't read it yet. I know it's in
Widowmaker is set in the month of February. Yeah. Yes, every one of the books is set in a different month, and it's because that the main game wardens have really different jobs depending upon the month of the year. For those who don't know, a lot of people, I think, come to the books thinking that a game warden, at least in Maine, is kind of analogous to like a park ranger. You clean up the outhouses and whatever. But game wardens in Maine are law enforcement officers. They train. They go to the Maine Criminal Justice Academy. And have all the arrest powers of a state trooper. On the other hand, they are also, because they're, that's not their focus. Their focus is on fish and game stuff, but they're stationed a lot of times in the middle of nowhere. So usually they're the nearest law enforcement officer to certain kinds of emergencies. Which for me as a fiction writer has given me all kinds of possibilities in terms of what I'm going to write. So I've been kind of going forward with this idea that, well, every month of the year the wardens are doing something different. So if it's May, it's fishing. If it's I haven't written my November book yet, but when I do, it will be deer hunting, like big time, which is why I'm terrified to write it, because I know I won't get it right. But this book is set in February, and the wardens usually in this period of time are dealing with people who get lost on, off of snow trails and that kind of thing. So it's a good way for me to sort of check in and make sure that Mike's life is moving slowly forward, and here's something new that I haven't dealt with before that's part of his life, that could be part of his life. It's really kind of a fun way for me to structure the series as I'm moving forward. Of course, as some people have noted, it means that there will only ultimately be 12 books. And my response to that is, if I'm lucky to have written 12 books, I will be very happy. Yes, sir.
Is Mike Bowden's character based on someone you know, or a composite that you know?
Is Mike based on somebody I know? No, he's not based on somebody I know. He, Well, when I first started writing The Poacher's Son, I didn't know a lot of game wardens. So I really didn't know, and I didn't know a lot of young game wardens, which is probably more important. So I was really self-conscious about what I was doing with that character, because I said, oh, he must be totally wrong. People are going to read this and think that I'm such a fraud. And I really was. I was really, really worried. And then what happened was that I started getting emails from people who were going to join either the conservation law enforcement degree at the Unity College, which is a kind of a feeder for the warden service, or young wardens, new wardens, and they were all responding to Mike. And I thought he was like this horrible, irresponsible outlier. And they were all like, nope, that's how I feel. And in fact, one of the funniest things that ever happened to me was that I met, and I'm friends with now, the game warden who is the union rep. So his job is any time that a warden does something horrible, right? Let's say drives drunk, has some problem with his wife that's public, that requires the the police to come. Maybe he's in deep with gambling. All those things, human things, right? My friend has to deal with those in the context of the warden service, right? Yes, I did. And he said to me, he said, Paul, this was a shock. He said, there's nothing that Mike Bowditch has done that would get him fired. I was like, I don't know how to feel about that. But it's been really good, actually, meeting the wardens, and they're big fans, because I was so concerned about that initially, and then what I've come to realize is that we all work in workplaces that have people in them. That we're reporting to somebody who just has some problem, and oh my God, it drives us nuts, and it causes all kinds of headaches for us. And the bureaucracy of being in a workplace, you think, that's the thing, is I think that with the game wardens, right, they're off in the woods. Well, no, they're not. Every night they have to come home and file reports, and there's some dick on the other side of that thing that says, no, this isn't quite right. You didn't fill in this thing, And it's like, yeah, that's the nature of life, right? It's like, and so, that's the thing with Mike. I think, I was so worried about Mike being this, like, crazy, irresponsible person. And I think, he is, but I think Mike would be really good at paperwork, which actually might be more important for his advancement than all the other stuff. Because he's smart. He knows to fill in the forms. So, yes. Yeah, you.
How long is it from your idea for a new book to finished manuscript?
How long is it from when I have a new idea to turn it in? It can depend, I guess. And I won't get around the question. I have a contract that says that I have to turn in a book every year, which is incredibly motivating. There's nothing like saying, if you don't turn this in, you're not going to get paid. Because I get paid twice a year, which is, can you imagine that? But I'm still trying to find my way, so that when I finish a book, usually when I finish a book, I'm kind of reeling. I don't know how good it is. I'm waiting to hear from other people, my agent, my editor, and it's really hard to figure out where I'm going to go after that. The other thing that happens now is that I'm writing this series, and so of course I'm hearing from my readers, and my readers are saying to me, well, I hate her. Why do you have her in this book? I'm like, oh, God. And so I have to decide whether I want to, listen to, or say to myself, you know what, I know where this is going, and I have faith in myself that this is going to be okay. So there are a lot of questions, I think, at the beginning of each book about what I'm going to do next. People often ask me, well, do you know where this is going? And I do, in a vague way. I know Mike's sort of arc as a person, from The Poacher's Son sort of forward. But, having said that, there are a lot of things that I keep myself open to, so that, it's not just if I hear from readers that they don't like a character or whatever. I step back myself and say, well, maybe this is an opportunity for me to do something different than what I expected. But the reality is that what I'm writing is, most of the crime writers, I think, that are doing things that I do are writing a series, which is to say that the character may be evolving from book to book. But what I realized in the last 2 years is that I'm writing a saga, if that makes any sense, because every book doesn't sort of start with Mike as a blank slate. It starts with where he is, or where he should be based upon what happened in the last book. So everything is kind of moving forward and moving forward and moving forward. I feel a lot more association, for instance, with Game of Thrones than I do with Robert Parker. And, which suggests that sooner or later there's an end with this. With dragons, yes. So we'll see. Yes?
Do you travel to all these places in Maine and get an idea of what how obscure and far out there some of these places are?
Do I travel all over yes, I do. And what's really hard is when I travel to someplace and no, not get lost. And the precipice, for instance, the epicenter of the story was this really nice town of Monson. And Monson, it has plenty of problems and everything. But I knew when I was thinking about how the story was going to unfold that it had to be at the center of something bad. And I spent a lot of time there. And, the more time I felt I was there, the more I felt horrible about what I was going to do. Because they don't deserve me. I mean, it was really bad. I do sometimes, yes. But with Monson, I couldn't. I mean, there was really no way to do it because it is the start of the 100-mile wilderness. And I just said, it's not going to ring true if I come up with some lame title for that. But people, it's interesting how people respond to my main characters because as probably most of you know, I used to be the editor-in-chief of Down East magazine, which was a great job. I did my best when I was the editor. But Down East is primarily kind of an optimistic view of Maine. It tries to present the best of Maine. And I worked there for about 16 years. And all that time, I was trying to find ways to sort of introduce the real Maine into the magazine. But there were lots of things I couldn't do. And so what happened was that I would go home and I'd put everything that I couldn't write in Down East into my novels. And now what happens is that I'll go on Amazon and see some review and it's like, oh my God, Maine sucks. It's like, this is like the most horrible, if this is remotely true, I'm like, oh God, that's not what I intended either. But yeah, it's kind of I don't know. I'm trying to balance everything. It's like what I write about is I try to write about real people. I try to write about, and sometimes real people are not. I think that's one thing is that a lot of times the real people that I write about are not like book smart people. And so they're a little rough, but they're also really smart and they're colorful and sly and witty and everything. And I hope people give them more credit. One of my favorite characters is actually a character I haven't dealt with in a long time. Her name is Amy Kronk, and she's do you know Amy? She's the wife of a convict. And I love Amy Kronk. She's like smarter than me. And it's just like, it's so fun to write her because she's just like, has no education, but she's sharp as a tack and has, a quadrillion kids and everything. But she's just like, and that's the thing about Maine. That's what I'm trying to capture, I guess, is not so much the specifics of her situation, as that's what Maine is like. You have people who are not necessarily school smart, who are just, you get them in conversation and you're just like, wait, she's putting me down. Wait a minute, she put me down again. It's like, oh my God, I need to get out of here. She's like too sharp. And so that's the thing, is like I'm trying to capture that stuff is characters of all kinds. And including people obviously who are not from Maine, who are there in the state and too. So yes.
Which came first, Poacher's Son or Northwood's Law?
Poacher's Son, by far. Poacher's Son, as in somebody owes me some money. Poacher's Son was published 2 years or a year before Northwood's Law. My first reading, one of the producers was in my audience. So I'm not saying. Yes, sir.
I believe that you're a licensed Maine guide, is
I am.
that correct?
Yes.
Is that something you did before starting the series, and have you always had an outdoor interest in general?
Yes. What happened was that I came back to Maine when I was around 30, 31. And I was like a lot of Maine kids, which, saying, I'm never coming back to Maine. And ended up back there, quite honestly, because I ran out of money and I had to live with my parents, and it was horrible. But anyway, that wasn't my 31-year-old experience. No, I mean, one of the things that happened to me when I came back to Maine was that I remembered all of the things that I loved about the state, specifically the stuff that was outdoors. And just, it's funny. I mean, I think there's this thing where you're fighting against yourself about where you belong and who you are. And I was that kind of person where I was just like, I didn't want to believe that I was some person who belonged in Maine. I thought that, you go out of Maine to make history and to be important and to do all these things. And at the same time, I was just being pulled back to who I was. And at the same time, I was reading mysteries, contemporary mysteries for the first time in my life. I was a huge mystery fan when I was a teenager, but my wife gave me all of the contemporary mysteries. So I was reading P.D. James and Tony Hillerman and James Lee Burke, and I just can go on, Dennis Lehane. And she said to me, these are pretty good writers. If you can write this good, Paul, you should be happy. You shouldn't have higher aspirations. So that was what happened. Essentially, was that I was back in Maine, realizing how much it was the place that I was supposed to be in the world. And the one thing that I had to say to readers was, let me try to share with you what it is about this place that's so meaningful to me. And from a storytelling point of view, I like mysteries. I don't know, it kind of got me off my high horse, my Yale high horse to write mysteries. And so, the end result of this was that Maine became my muse. Maine, I wanted to write not just about Maine in the specific, but sort of what Maine represented for me. I think especially now, because what I've seen is sort of the just in our culture, just the Americans are just getting so far away from our relationships with the outdoors in ways that are some. I mean, it's not everybody, and of course, but you see this more and more where people just don't get it. They don't understand certain kind of fundamentals about how nature works. It's cruel. It's not, we want to have this equilibrium, right? Let's like give all the deer birth control, but let's not control the coyote population. So the coyotes are going to be eating all the fertile deer or non-fertile deer, whatever it is. I don't know. I mean, it's a very understandable sort of thing because most of us now don't have to think about these, we don't have to think about our landscape. And that's where Mike is that, he's this millennial who's like, he just wants to go back. He wants to go back, to some sort of an era in which, people are living with their hands and, pumping water from the well and all that stuff. And of course, that's not right either. It's like, I don't know. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm trying to grapple with in the books is that Mike he feels so strongly about everything, of course, which is very millennial. And I'm trying to get my readers to sort of think about things like, well, how do I think about deer in my yard? How do I think about, wanting a park in Maine if I don't have to think about it, but it's going to affect somebody who lives up there, like profoundly. So, I don't know. It's it's one of the things I'm trying to do is to make it topical and meaningful. Yes.
Did you have to do much research with wolves or go to a sanctuary?
I did go to a sanctuary with wolves. It was the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. And so in Widowmaker, what happens is that there is a wolf dog. Obviously, this is what the wolf is, and there used to be a wolf sanctuary. I'm not sure if it actually really exists anymore. It's kind of it's hard to figure out at the moment. And it's right on the New Hampshire-Maine border. And it's the middle of nowhere, like really the middle of nowhere. Many years ago, somebody said, "Do you want to see the wolves?" I'm like, "Sure, I'll go see the wolves." So we drove up there from the Maine side, and I'm not sure how close we were. I think the property went into Maine. It was partly New Hampshire, partly Maine. And as we got closer, we saw ravens circling. And if you know anything about natural history, ravens and wolves have essentially a symbiotic relationship. Ravens prey on lots of things. They're the most intelligent bird in North America. But one of the things that they can't do is that they cannot, with their beaks, as sharp as they are, they can't penetrate through the skin of a corpse. So what they need to have happen is they need some other animal to begin tearing apart that corpse so that they can stick their beaks in. So that's why they have this symbiotic relationship with wolves historically or anti-historically. So we drove up into the White Mountains, and there was this circle of ravens. And I tried to describe this in Widowmaker, so you'll see this. Come down over the crest, and we come into this valley where it's a sanctuary for wolf dogs. And so these ravens are, even though I don't know what they're feeding, I think they're going into the pens and pecking at the cow, the pig heads that are being thrown in there, because that's what was happening, is that they'd feed them with all kinds of stuff from a slaughterhouse. But evidently the wolves, what they liked most was pig head day. So they would, bring in a pickup truck with a bunch of pig heads, throw the pig heads into the things. And it's part of the book, so you'll see that. But it was so uncanny for me. Here I am, I'm in western Maine, almost in New Hampshire, and I'm watching dozens and dozens of ravens swirling overhead, and I'm hearing these wolf dogs howling like wolves. I mean, it was just like the chill that was going up my back was just incredible. And I said, I have to put this into a book someday. So you will find when you read Widowmaker that this happens in the book. So, it was great. I mean, that's the thing about my job is like, I don't know what I'm gonna get out of my experiences, my research stuff, but it's so wonderful to be able to be given the chance to meet people and learn about their lives and learn about what they're doing. I was on an offshore island about a month ago where I was herding sheep. I was 10 miles off the coast of Maine, and I was like a human sheepdog, like trying to like scare sheep, from like getting past me and stuff. And it's like, sooner or later, that's going to go in a book. It's like, it's so awesome.
Did you write these notes down?
Oh, yes, I write my notes. I write all kinds of notes, so maybe one more question, yeah.
You said in your liner notes that your wife was a better writer than you.
Yes, she is.
Did she contribute to your...
She did. My wife is, she's a poet. Her name is Kristen Lindquist. And the one thing, I guess, if for anybody who's interested, she writes a haiku every day. And it's really cool, actually. It's one of those kind of things where you can follow it, where it's like, if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. There's no obligation, you know what I mean? But she is the naturalist in our family. I mean, I've picked up a lot, but she's really good at. I mean, she's incredible at, for instance, bird songs. So she could walk through a place blindfolded and tell you 50 different birds that were singing on either side of her. And that's so, I mean, sometimes, yeah, it is cool. And sometimes I'm like, I take a deep breath. And but it's worse when she quizzed me. It's like, she's like, what's that? I'm like, it's a goldfinch? She said, no, that's a blue-headed vireo, Paul. I'm like, But it's good. I mean, that's the thing, is that I try to surround myself with people who know the outdoors, so that when I write about these things, I have lots of people to turn to who can read them and help me. Because, I mean, the reality is that actually Mike knows a lot more about natural history than most of the words that I know. So... Yeah, well, maybe one more. Anybody have one more question? Oh, come on. Yes.
A long time down east Australia, was there a tension between the positive, pushing the positive side of things and simultaneously developing the real estate character?
Yeah.
Points at which it had to break.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that down east is I think that used to have the reputation for being kind of a Pollyannish view of Maine. And when I was given control as editor-in-chief, I was trying to make it more realistic, but also ultimately positive. I mean, I think that's the thing the way that I looked at it was, hey, look, if you were kind of a glass half-filled person, this is your magazine. But as hard as I pushed that, ultimately, personally, I'm kind of a glass half empty person. And so, it was like, and also I'm a Maine native, and I had all these experiences and relatives and, who had this Maine that I couldn't, if I could have, I would have tried to introduce it into Down East, and I couldn't do it. But I knew that I wanted to write about it, and ultimately that's what my books have been about. Everything that kind of I wanted to put in the magazine that I couldn't put in the magazine. So I'm really proud of what I did during my tenure there, and I'm proud of what the magazine has become. And I encourage you all to go and read it and subscribe and everything. But my books are my books. I mean, they're kind of this own thing, and lots of times, I'll read comments from people saying, God, Mainers seem like they're just like these grotesque, horrible, like weird people. I don't want to ever go to Maine. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. I mean, it's like, but, that's probably more my feeling as a writer, because what I'm trying to capture is the fact that we're all, prickly, I guess is what I'd say. We all have and of course that's the thing, is that, law enforcement officers, there's a great, maxim about this, is that, police officers see people at their worst, judges see people at their best. So by the time that somebody is in court, they have buttoned up their shirt over their neck tattoo, really tightly. But that's the thing, is that, law enforcement officers see people at their worst, and that's what I'm trying to describe as a law enforcement officer. So,
Were you born in Maine?
yes.
You lived all your life except for your 4 years in jail? And where is your accent? You have nothing.
My mom is from the Midwest.
I know.
She's from Joliet, Illinois. And she just, like, every time I would, like, manifest a Maine accent, she'd like, No, she didn't hit me. But she really, it's really weird. I mean, it's not only, but my dad actually has a very thick French-Canadian accent. And he's never overcome entirely. I mean, his first language was French. And he has a hard time with TH. He says t. So Bitterford.
Born and brought up in Maine, and taught here at school for the last 30 years, and you still can't understand that.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, though, I'm kind of glad in retrospect that I didn't get that. Although I wish I was able to do the Maine accent, because I think it would be good for like my show and dance, song and dance part of it. But anyway, so thank you for coming out tonight. I really do appreciate it.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.